Hey, what's going on? This is the Body Punch Podcast, and my name is Naz. Let's talk about Gane versus Tuivasa. Cyril Gane is going to be taking on the rising star Tai Tuivasa in his home city and country of Paris, France. It's going to be a fun heavyweight bout. Great way for the UFC to really put their stamp down, put their foot down into the country for the first time with any event. And this fight night card is just one with Robert Whittaker and Marvin Vettori co-headlining the event. It's going to be a great treat for the people out there. First time, like I said, for the UFC to come down there. And what a great main event with Cyril Gane taking on the rising star and Tai Tuivasa. Tai Tuivasa being one of those fighters that the UFC knows for a fact that every single time that they put this guy in front of a crowd, he is going to entertain them. And in ways outside of the cage, in ways inside of the cage, is going on such a great streak in the heavyweight division at such a young age for that division. And his last win against Derek Lewis in his hometown in Houston, Texas, he got that elbow KO. That's what he was noted for in UFC 271. What a win for him. Really put him on the map. Derek Lewis, as we all know, is such a major star in the UFC. Is such a funny guy, but also, you know, the KO king of that division. And Tai Tuivasa really put himself into the fire with that fight. Really stuck his chin out in that one and went for broke and KO'd one of the great KO artists the UFC's ever seen. Again, he is also someone that puts himself into the fire as well, and that might be to his detriment. Derek Lewis going on a bit of a skid, but also taking out fighters like Augusto Sakai, Greg Hardy, when he knocked him out in the first round. I remember it was a back and forth. Say whatever you want about Greg Hardy, but he's a big boy, and if his fist connects with your chin, he's gonna knock you out. And for Tai Tuivasa to take the chance that he did and take out Greg Hardy, who, I don't know, it seemed like the UFC was really backing at one point, just flatlined Greg Hardy at UFC 264 in July. And then taking out the likes of Stefan Struve at UFC 254, KOing him. And he's just a great star for Australia. And I've mentioned this before on other podcasts, but for him to carry on what Mark Hunt started, one of his proteges, and to do what he's doing in the UFC, it's a great treat, because Mark Hunt was one of my favorite fighters to watch. The knockout king, the king of the walk-off knockouts. And for Tai Tuivasa to bring that style, that swagger that he has, that Mark Hunt had, being one of his long-term training partners. And for Tai to come into the UFC and kind of just do what Mark Hunt was doing a bit is great to see. And again, so much fun to watch. He's such a character in the UFC and everybody loves him. But he's taking on Cyril Gane, who last fought against the champion Francis Ngannou, who really took him for a spin and started wrestling him, started taking him down. Really surprisingly, it seemed like that whole fight was just meant for Cyril Gane to rise to the top and secure that belt, being the athletic looking kickboxing champion style MMA fighter. And for him to lose the way that he did, it must have been super devastating and very surprising. Again, it seemed like everything was pointing for Cyril Gane to win. And it might just be because the fact that Francis Ngannou was going through so much contract negotiation issues and, you know, a bunch of stuff at the time and even now. And it seemed like the UFC was really teeing him up to become the champion of the heavyweight division. Could you imagine Cyril Gane? I mean, Francis Ngannou is such a great champion, but Cyril Gane is a couple steps behind him in terms of the look, in terms of the story, the marketability of the guy. He's so athletic. But, you know, again, Francis Ngannou got the better of him. And he was undefeated before facing the current champion. Also taking out Derek Lewis in Houston, Texas. That might be a curse, but for Derek Lewis. But taking out Alexander Volkov, Rosenstrike, JDS, Tanner Bozer, and a bunch of other fighters. And just flying through that division. And again, he's also young, just like Tai Tuivasa as well. Especially for that division. He's got such a height advantage. You know, the striking that he shows. He looks like he's such a lighter fighter. He fights like someone in, you know, maybe 170 pounds instead of the 265 or whatever he's at. And again, 32 is the age that he's at, which is super young, super young. And 29 for Tai Tuivasa. One thing that I don't like about this fight is the fact that one of these stars in the UFC is going to be taken out. Obviously, MMA is quite different than boxing or any other combat sport where a loss doesn't mean as much. But it still sucks that one of these fighters is going to take out the other and just push them all the way back. Tai Tuivasa, it seems like, you know, he's getting on with the UFC really well, having partnerships with the UFC in Australia, really being the number 2 face for Australian MMA, right behind Robert Whittaker and Alexander Volkanovski and a bunch of those other guys. But being one of those mainstays in Australian MMA. And same thing with Cyril Gane. I mean, he's one of the only fighters coming out of that area that's represented in the UFC. There's other organizations that have French fighters, but he's the main guy in the UFC. So whoever gets taken out in this fight, I mean, it's a big loss for them, but people have been talking about what is a win in this division. What does it mean for someone to win this particular fight? And some people are speculating that the winner of this fight could possibly take Stipe Miocic's hypothetical spot in the John Jones sweepstakes. This could be the fight that decides on who's facing the former light heavyweight champion, and in some people's eyes, the consensus greatest of all time, to make his debut in the heavyweight division. They really wanted to make the Francis fight with John Jones. Doesn't seem like that's happening because of Francis's ACL injury, and also contract disputes and a bunch of other stuff that's happening. We totally forgot about the boxing stuff that Francis Ngannou wants to engage in with Tyson Fury. Seems like Tyson Fury may have, he's moving on from that boxing fight with Francis Ngannou and moving on to different things. Maybe he's going to stay retired. Who knows? But John Jones really wanted to fight for that heavyweight championship. That's not happening. Maybe a fight against Cyril Gane or Tai Tuivasa is perfect. And that might negate the concerns that I may have about one of these great fighters losing. Meaning that if the award for this fight, since it's so great, to fight John Jones, I'm okay with one of them, like losing their spot just like this. And who knows? This is such a crazy game. It might be time for one of them to step back a little bit and start fighting lower level fighters. Who knows? But again, this is going to be a fun fight. I think it's going to be a great kickboxing exchange. Bam Bam always, comes correct and represents his area. Same with Cyril Gane. He's such a mega star over there in Paris, France. Always playing in those celebrity um, soccer games and is all over TV and stuff, all over the news over there. But it's going to be a fun one. And the middleweight fight in this fight night card is a great one. Robert Whittaker, ex-champion in the 185-pound division, is taking on Marvin Vettori, who's fought the who's who in that 185-pound division. Marvin Vettori right here. His last win was against Paulo Costa. The one right before that was against the champion, Israel Adesanya. It seemed like he got the really best of Paulo Costa and Marvin Vettori, made him look a little bit more human. But don't forget that this guy took out like Kevin Holland, Jack Hermanson, Carl Roberson, and fought Israel Adesanya before that. And some people said gave him some issues in that fight, especially with the wrestling, and one of his biggest tests in rising to that championship fight and championship belt. But Marvin Vettori is going to be taking on the former champion, like I said, Robert Whittaker, one of the greats, the greatest Australian fighter of all time. He's fought Israel Adesanya numerous times now, twice and lost. Also, he went on such a run, taking out Kevin Gastelum, who gave Israel Adesanya such a hard time. Jared Cannonier, Darren Till, Yoel Romero twice. That was such a tough series of fights that Robert Whittaker had against Yoel Romero. In that second one, doing exactly what happened to him and started going for those oblique kicks, taking out, Derek Brunson, Uriah Hall, and I believe, even he lost to Stephen Thompson, but came back and just went on a tear, went on a complete tear, took off a little bit of time, but then came back and is looking great. I mean, his last loss was against Israel Adesanya, but who doesn't lose to Israel Adesanya unless you're John Blachowicz or someone at 205. This is going to be a great fight. I think that the striking of Robert Whittaker is one thing that he'll like to take advantage of. But don't forget that Robert Whittaker is a great wrestler. What a great wrestler on his run towards the title. He was using his wrestling a bunch in conjunction with his striking. Marvin Vettori might not have the striking edge, but he might also try and implement a lot more wrestling in this fight than Robert Whittaker would like. The unconventional striking patterns of Robert Whittaker could lead him to a win in that sense, but it could also open him up for the wrestling from the super strong and big for the division, Marvin Vettori. This is going to be a great fight. It will really show us a lot in this division. There's a lot of contenders in this division, and what can you say? Like, I mean, Robert Whittaker is one of those fighters that if Israel Adesanya wasn't in that division, would he still be the champion? And I believe he would. He just keeps getting wins after wins after wins, but losing to the current 185-pound champion. They're very interesting fights. They're really fun fights to watch when Robert Whittaker and Israel Adesanya go head to head. But will people want to see that over and over again if he gets the win? And it's the same thing with Marvin Vettori. I mean, he fought Israel Adesanya and lost. He lost pretty badly. Will people want to see him fight for the belt again? it's a very interesting fight. The two fights at the top of the card are really fun to watch. For sure, watch those ones. The rest of the card um is okay. I'm seeing some good names on here like Joaquin Buckley and um a couple of people here and there, but the very top heavy card, people, Robert Whittaker, Marvin Vettori, Cyril Gane, all fought for belts. Tai Tuivasa is right up there as well. What a great way for them to, put their foot down in Paris, France. This is gonna be a fun one. Super, super great way. Um, and I can't wait to see what the fans' reaction is over there. Are they going to be super hungry for this? Are they going to be ready for this? Is it going to be a packed crowd? I believe so. The UFC's been on a great run thus far, but it's also opening up for the UFC to go to other countries aside from the US or Abu Dhabi or London, or maybe they'll start going to a lot more different countries, especially with the COVID virus, subsiding and being over. Will they start going to a lot more countries like they did in the past? Like, will they come back to Canada? Um, will they go all over Europe? Who knows? Let's see. But this is a great step in that direction. And it's a major fight with major implications, both of them. So I really appreciate you listening. Thank you for taking the time. If you can like, subscribe, hit the bell notification on YouTube, that really helps. If you can give 5 stars on the podcast platforms, that would be awesome. And yeah, leave a comment, drop an email, communicate. Let's talk. Thank you again. My name is Naz. This has been the Body Punch Podcast. Bye.